Great. I haven't been here a while. I'm so happy to be back. I wanted to tell you about my friend, who I will be calling E for the rest of this. I have a theory that loving an addict prepares you for a life of loving a ghost. They're not always there, they're not always themselves, and they are absolutely unburdened by reality. So I wonder sometimes if any of this actually happened. The only proof that I have is the moon and a small scar under my left eye. So E. So it's actually kind of funny. We met as little children in karate class. I remember like going to his house. He had a little sister who was my age, and we would like play video games in the basement, and like I just kind of have that memory, like it's sort of distant. Later in life he would tell me that it was only a few years later that he started using. And so we, of course, fell apart. We were like literally like 6 years old. And then I hadn't seen him again until 20 years later when like I graduated college, I got my master's degree, and it was time for me to go to like my first like big girl job. And I open the door and he's right there. He's already ahead of me. He's there. And it turns out that we actually have like a ton of stuff in common. So same field of work, we lived in the same neighborhood, and we both had recently been hospitalized for mental health issues. And that was one of the first things that I noticed about him, was the way that he spoke about his mental illness and his experiences. And I was always just so mesmerized by like his candor and his honesty, and how he made the ugly side of mental illness feel accessible. And it enabled me to be able to identify as a person with a mental illness who doesn't have shame about it. And I fell in love with him almost very quickly afterwards. So I'm trying to remember things. I'm so sorry. So the rest of the story is like pretty meandering. It's kind of like amorphous, and you've probably heard all of it if you've ever known an addict. We basically just took turns watching each other completely fall apart. And he was emotionally unavailable, and I was incapable of not doubling down. And we just spent all of this time together, sometimes dating other people, sometimes sort of dating each other. And there was a time period where he went to grad school in New Orleans, and I remember visiting him, and he was living in the lower 9th Ward for some reason. And I remember being on the back of his motorcycle, and we were just going into the night and just thinking like, this was so exhilarating. You know, like I just thought that it was exciting. Anyway, when we reconnected, he came back to Philadelphia. He was living in his car with his dog, who weighed like twice as much as he did at that time. He had just lost a buck ton of weight. And so I wanted him to get better, so I just waited. I waited while he went to detox, and while he went to recovery houses, and while he did all these other things, while he relapsed, while he was mean to me, while he scared me. And I don't know, I just thought of him as like, he had all of these kind aspects to him. So he would, if he heard like sadness in my voice over the phone, he would show up to my house like 20 minutes later with flowers. I'd later realize that all of those flowers were stolen, and that's what I mean when I say it's like loving a ghost. So eventually, we just sort of got to a good place with it, and I thought it was a good place. I thought that he was like my Prince Charming, but like on meth. So like, you know, and I'm sorry. New Year's Eve a couple of years ago, I went to his house. We were, and he was like, all he wanted to do was shoot fireworks off of his roof, and I was like playing the role of babysitter that night, which I often did. And I was like, that's not happening. Like, let's go walk around. Like, we'll find someone shooting fireworks, and we did. So we found this bar that was like shooting off fireworks in the middle of the street, and he got so excited, and he grabbed my hand and he took me towards the crowd, and we were like right underneath the fireworks, and he told me to look up, and which was very similar to things he had done in the past, where he would just call me and be like, look at the moon, and like it was so crazy, but I was like, but have you seen the moon lately? Like, it's fucking incredible. And I never regretted doing that with him. But New Year's Eve, we're underneath the fireworks. He grabs my hand, I'm looking up. It was like the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen, to see these flames like calmly floating down to earth. And he kissed me at midnight underneath the fireworks, and I was like, this is like a magic fairy tale, you know? Like, and then I realized I had that experience, and I looked up, and I saw this one piece of paper coming down, and as I heard it hit my left eye and sizzle as it was burned, I finally had the sense of, this is not a fairy tale. Thank you.